The eternal matchup between Dark Elves and High Elves has entered an interesting new phase with where we are in Immortal Empires, in that they're both quite strong factions right now. In fact, I kind of flip-flop around on this a little bit these days, as I often do in my life on most things. But, yeah, the High Elves and Dark Elves, I think, might be the best land battle factions just overall. I would really need to sit down and do like a full tier list matchup breakdown for every single faction, every single matchup in the game in land battles to really 100% say for certain how I feel about that. And even then, it's subject to change in short notice. But it certainly does seem that, I mean, High Elves, Dark Elves, I should say, we've known since the beginning of Mortal Empires that they are, and we're going to be quite strong, still are. Absolutely, have been the whole time. High Elves, I think it was less clear to me that the High Elves were going to be very strong, but especially once they got that wide-ranging cost reduction on a lot of their core units, they have been absolutely dominating in the meta. And today we've got Game 2 between Hanadins and the green one. Hanadins coming in hot with Malekith. He's got some Scourge Chariots. He's got a couple of Cold One Knights going wide in terms of stance, but actually not that wide in terms of army. He's got a Bleak Sword, Big Sword, a Dark Shard there, a couple Witch Elves. For the High Elves here, Imric is going to lead the way. Some White Lion infantry here, 5 of them, very cost-effective. Also very cost-effective are Lothern Seaguard, 5 of them as well. Some Spearmen, Lore of Life. No cavalry. Yeah, no cavalry to speak of whatsoever. So, excuse me, that means that the Dark Elves are going to have mobility advantage, and you can see Hanadins very patiently approaching here, not wasting any of the ammunition on his Scourge Chariots, on anything that's unimportant here. Wants to conserve all of that ammo, or as much as possible, for Imric, because he's such a massive threat up in the sky. Are we going to get an early clash, though? Did you see some of those rare matched combat animations between the dragons? Are those still in the game? I would certainly hope so, although I have no idea, to be honest. Malekith's going to take a few hits there, tosses a nice Soul Stealer to get it back, and also throw some damage at Imric. Yeah, Malekith there doing okay. Did get the Lord of Dragons also pulled out, which means it's now going to be on cooldowns. Less risky to engage Imric while, obviously that's on cooldown, but while that engagement's been playing out, Witch Elves have taken some damage from these archers, and the full surround is now in play. But of course, with this nice High Elven defensive position, the fact that these Lothern Seaguard have spears, they should be able to resist at least the cavalry portion of this attack fairly well. Witch Elves are entirely another story. Plenty of spearmen here to reinforce. See other parts of the battlefield more or less the same story. Dark Riders here getting pushed away pretty quickly, but then you have the follow-up, hopefully, from the Witch Elves. Looks like they might have missed their attack order, unfortunately. But these Dark Shards also being chased around by the White Lion infantry. Cold One Knight's going to attempt to respond. Imric eats refresh, Vigor refresh there, and of course the heal from regrowth as he tries to plan out his next engagement. The High Elves archers, or Lothern Seaguard specifically, definitely making their presence felt. One breath attack's going to be used to just eliminate those Witch Elves from the battlefield, get rid of their Enrage effect and Madness. They should be routing in short order. And so far, the High Elves have been able to defend here. Green one doing a good job of kind of responding to threats as they develop and not overcommitting in one area. Oof, nasty miscast, though, on that Mage of Life. That took away like a quarter of her HP, so just got blasted there. Did get a nice regrow or Earthblood, though. That's going to hit a number of key units here, including herself. Stand your ground also, but oof, yeah, she takes an attack from Malekith there and it's going to get terrified away. The elimination of healing for the High Elves would definitely be a big issue. And the Scourge Chariots have been focusing Malekith very efficiently. That's where most of this damage has come from. You see their ammunition is now low, and not only that, but they're also conserving a little bit for the late game as they kind of deploy into melee against some of these High Elf infantry, though with all these spears around, they are going to take some damage in that process. Let's see here, Malekith risking it for the biscuit. He's got the HP advantage on Imric, so it looks like he's going to try and take an engagement here, perhaps. Having a hard time getting an effective charge. Dragons charging dragons on the ground is surprisingly buggy. as we'll see more of in a minute. But for the time being, Imrik's going to go after the chariots and the Cold One Knights. The Cold One Knights can do absolutely nothing to block his absolute Chad Dragon. He only chooses to turn around and attack them. Anyway. Yeah. Crows of Cain here. Karen's sticking around for a long time indeed. The Dark Shards are also somehow still here. Yeah, balance of power looking slightly in favor of the green one at the moment, but let's see. Scourge Chariots are still alive. We've got more Bleak Swords coming back as well. Imrik's about to eat another regrowth, which should put him up near his healing cap. Looks like that caster wasn't fully finished off and managed to stick around to cast such magics. Imrik didn't actually get healed all that much from that. Surprising. Oh, she must have got knocked over. Yeah. Okay. Now he's actually getting the regrowth there. So, with Stand Your Ground active, Malekith could try and stand and fight here, but doesn't have the local support kind of in place to help him out here. Lothar and Seaguard are going to be able to turn and fire, so not an ideal engagement at all. And in general, the fact that a lot of the Dark Elves support units have just completely evaporated. Realistically, you've got some swordsmen here, mostly combat ineffective. Chariots are going to help out somewhat, but if they get bogged down for too long, they will die pretty quickly to the spears. Imrik himself is also likely going to kill them very quickly if they get tangled up with him. So Dark Elves are in a rough position, but Hanadin's still is definitely a very scary player, very strong player, and can try and make something out of this. Keep these chariots moving, perhaps. Concentrate all his forces and try and just break units wherever he can with overwhelming force. But right now, oof, taking that engagement up in the air. I mean, on one hand, it's smart because Imrik can't get any support units into melee. He can only try and shoot up in the sky, right? But also, you are kind of throwing the dice a little bit. I don't know. I guess it's more in your favor. Either way, it's going to be big dice rolls because of the way that single entity fights work, right? It's a heavy emphasis on attack rolls, and if those fail and you just whiff your attacks, don't do any damage, especially several times in a row, or if your opponent, their single entity hits you several times in a row, staggers you, there's just a lot of randomness that goes on in these fights, especially when there's parity between the two, which I would say Imrik is markedly better. Obviously with Lord of Dragons active, that's going to significantly change things. But even without Lord of Dragons active, Imrik is just overall, I think, a better combatant. Even though Malekith obviously has the advantage of being a caster. He drops in here with the chariots. The chariots could try and maybe run bumper cars and try and block some of the infantry away from the fight and let them have more of a clean 1v1, but it's going to be tough to execute. And for the green one, he just needs to hold Imrik on the ground pretty much and try and, utilize that support infantry as best he can. And now it's not looking great for the Dark Elves, so we'll fast forward a little bit through this late game phase as both players kind of cycle charge here. Nice Soul Stealer on Imrik is going to continue to chew away a little bit of HP on him and heal a little bit back on Malekith. But Malekith trying to get at Imrik in the air if he can, but at the cost of perhaps losing the rest of his ground force. Barons of Cain at least get into combat there. Malekith hits a nice from above breath attack here. Imrik is getting very low. Imrik gets killed. Obviously the High Elves will face some leadership penalties, but they do have enough leadership to give, and just the ground force here, I mean, the Spears and White Lions together could probably kill Malekith. I mean, White Lions in particular, their armor-piercing damage is very solid. Certainly good enough stats at 39 to hit Malekith, of course, even without Lord of Dragons. With Lord of Dragons, he's going to take a couple more attacks from Imrik. We'll see here. I guess they don't have the matched combat animations. Oh, no, there's something. Kinda. Oh, here we go. There we go. I wanted them to do the one where they fly up in the sky and slam down, but I don't know if that one's still in the game. Regardless, in those few attacks there, Malekith is continuing to take damage. Imrik is low, but got about a quarter of his HP left, doing just fine. Whiffs on that breath attack there, just clean miss, 100%. Don't know how you miss a dragon, but Imrik's dragon managed to do so. Imrik then struggles to land, eats a Stole Stealer, and then runs away, or just dies. Yeah, a little bit of an anticlimactic end for Imrik, but that means it's going to be up to his rank-and-file troops to try and finish off the Foul Witch King here. Oh, man. Absolute brutality as, like, 10 guys just get exploded on that attack. Terror's going to kick in, and one clutch unit of White Lions, still with a little over half their HP left, is going to hold and not Terror out and continue fighting Malekith. So we'll fast forward as he goes on. Legally, according to the tournament rules, Malekith is allowed to fight these routing units, but I would have to double check on the specifics of the cycle charging rules, but I would say absolutely no rule break here. And finally dives in for the last engagement. Will the Spears and the White Lions be enough to carry? It does appear that it's just too much. The staunch silvered steel of the High Elves. Much too much for the foul Darth Vader. I mean, you know what I mean. Malekith, of course. And the High Elves take it. So crazy close game there at the end. I initially watched this replay. I had no idea what to think, but that was impressive finish. The green one managed to stay firm and just, you know, not panic in that situation. Just keep your units in a boxy formation. Try and get as much rank and file as possible. So when Malekith charges in, he'll be surrounded immediately. Ends up working out. So very, very close game. In this series, man, spoiler alert, this series is going to be a barn burner, guys. Definitely very excited to cast the rest of the games. Malekith does some insanely heavy lifting here. The rest of his army, other than the Scourge Chariots, actually doesn't do a lot for him, unfortunately. The Witch Elves, I like the idea of them. Maybe one is nice, but against High Elf bows, they're just so squishy. And I mean, they're rarely going to pay for themselves in terms of damage output because of that, I think. So maybe just going a tiny bit wider, kind of cutting them, and maybe going a tiny bit wider around that. The Dark Shards also, I don't 100% know what the purpose of these guys was. Probably could cut them and reallocate the funds elsewhere. Maybe try and pick up a third Scourge Chariot if possible. But on the High Elf side here, Imrik does some heavy lifting, but then also, I mean, certainly the Lion Infantry has been shown to be quite solid in a number of circumstances. And of course, Lothran Sea Guard do what they do, being extremely cost-effective as well, and even 1,000 value on a spear. It's not bad. So, really looking forward to casting the rest of the games, like I said, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Subscribe so you don't miss them. Hit that bell notification. And yeah, like the video, share with a friend if you found it entertaining or informative. That's all. Thanks again. See you next time.